It is now 7 o'clock, and I would like to call this special meeting of Kimberley City Council held here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples for Monday, March 6th to order. We have basically one item on the agenda, the public agenda tonight. Do we have anything that has been added, Maurice?
There's no late item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have somebody move adoption of the agenda? Councillor Royer and Councillor McBain seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, as I said, we have a singular purpose for being here tonight. As you see in the kind of in the lead up, we have a number of motions to go through here, but similar to the other financial presentations, I think we'll deal with these as we go through the presentation, if you're cool with that, Jim.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's the first resolution there is just that council accept the report for information. If we could get that one out of the way, that'd be great.
Okay,
and then we'll...
awesome. Councillor McBain moves. Councillor Karen seconds. Any opposed? The motion is carried.
Okay.
So
I think we're going to get the presentation up on the screen here. But just, I'll just lead in here. This isn't part of the presentation tonight. We're not really going to have any discussion on it, but I just wanted to make mention of the Growing Communities Fund. For those members of council that may not have heard about it, for the viewing public, there was a grant program that was announced in early February. The provincial government's giving $1 billion to municipalities and regional districts in British Columbia, and they just announced this past Friday the amounts that each municipality is getting. And so for Kimberley, they're going to write us a check for $3.14 million, so $3,414,000. There's not a whole lot of information that's been released about on what the program is, what the requirements of the program are, the criteria, but I would say it's safe to say that it's infrastructure related projects. So more to come on that. Obviously, with it just coming out on Friday, we don't have anything in the budget for it, so we'll come up with a plan over the course of, I would suggest, the next year or the course of this year. I mean, all the larger projects we have in the budget have been tendered and most of them awarded already. So it's almost too late to get big projects on the books, put tenders out and get them awarded for the year. But yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there for folks that may not have known about it.
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great news.
I think I hear a Dire Straits song in the background. Money for something, I guess. I think it was called. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully council has reviewed the presentation and all of the data behind it, so we can have a productive conversation tonight. This looks awesome. Take it away, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And there's like, as you're probably finding a bit of a common theme with presentations here. There's a lot of information in here. A lot of supporting slides that I provide to council as information, something to refer back to if you need to later on. So I'm not going to go through each one of these slides in detail, but if there are any questions as we're going through these, please stop me. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So with regards to the agenda, we're just going to have a bit of a recap first, talk about Financial Plan Foundation, proposed operating base budget modifications for the general water and sewer funds. We'll talk about a preliminary calculation of the Aquatic Center parcel tax. And then we'll go over some changes to the capital and non-capital project plan that council had approved back in December. So with regards to the budget recap, council may recall that in November, council provided direction to set the utility fees for water, sewer, garbage, and recycling. So those fees have been adjusted. The bylaws have been adopted, and the first quarter billing has gone out and will be due in 4 days here. Council also approved the capital and non-capital project plan on December 7th. You also provided direction to amend year 2 of the current 5-year financial plan. So that bylaw has been modified. It's been amended and adopted. And then council also provided direction to set the flat tax levies for improved and unimproved parcels. So that's what we've done to date. So we'll talk a little bit about the Financial Plan Foundation. We talked a bit about this with the capital and non-capital project plan as well. Every year, BC municipalities are obligated to adopt a 5-year financial plan. So years 2 through 4 of the current 5-year financial, or 2 through 5 of the current 5-year financial plan form the foundation or the base budget. So that's kind of where we start with here. And we operate under year 2 of the current 5-year financial plan until the new 5-year plan is adopted, which typically isn't until April or May of the year. So we're in the early part of the year, so we're operating under year 2 of the current 5-year plan. So year 2 of that budget included a 1.9% increase as an inflationary adjustment. And it also included additional property tax collection of $100,000 to account for new tax on non-market assessment change. We've had a bit of discussion in past budget meetings about the non-market change. So those were the tax collection adjustments that were included in the current 5-year financial plan. Each year as we go through budget deliberations, the base budget it's typically modified for a variety of reasons, and I've noted some of them here. So higher than anticipated inflation, which is the case this year, in large part, adjustments to reflect historical actuals, carry forwards, council approved adjustments to fees and charges. So those are some of the reasons why the base budget is adjusted. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is adjustments to the operating budgets based on a bunch of those reasons. So I've got a table put together here that discusses the changes to the base budget. So the first one is adjustments to inflationary increases across the majority of the expenditure categories. And the next slide discusses it in a little more detail, but so what we're doing is we're adding $221,256 as an incremental inflationary adjustment. So as mentioned in previous slides, 1.9% is what we included in year 2 of the current 5-year plan. Just based on what's going on out there as far as inflationary adjustments, we've adjusted the majority of the expenditure categories from that 1.92% to 6%, which reflects the increase in BC CPI over the last 12 months, excluding food and energy. Some of the other categories like wages, we've left the same. We're in the last year of our collective agreement. So the negotiated increase for 2023 in that agreement was 2%. So the wage, which makes up roughly half of our operating budget, remained at 2%. Where most of the other expenditure categories, materials, supplies, were bumped by the 6%. So that's where that $221,000 comes from. Some of the other adjustments, so insurance premiums, and again, I've got a slide on that. I'll just go over it briefly. So we're increasing it by $64,000. Since 2018, we've seen fairly significant increases in every year. I'm coming back to council with adjustments. The largest adjustments this year were to the property insurance policy. So we're paying $221,000 for property insurance this year. That increased by 14% from last year. And the next biggest increase on a percentage basis was to our cyber risk insurance. And it's only a $7,600 policy, but it increased by 246%, so more than doubled. We get that insurance through the Municipal Insurance Authority, the same group that we get our property insurance and liability risk insurance through. And they're having a hard time finding companies that will cover municipalities for cyber risk. The company they had last year, they backed out, said they weren't going to provide it anymore, so they were scrambling a bit to try and find somebody that would even cover it. And it's getting to be quite an onerous process for us to even get the insurance. We've implemented a number of things on the IT side of things, like the multi-factor authentication and enhanced spam filtering. And without those, we wouldn't even be able to get the cyber insurance. So it's quite a questionnaire that we have to go through to even get approved for this insurance. So the next one is the Climate Action Reserve contribution adjustment. So there was a new program that was introduced by the province in 2022, was the first year of it. And under the previous climate action plan, we got a grant of about $30,000 that we would put into a reserve for energy efficiency initiatives, greenhouse gas reduction initiatives. Under this new program, we get just over $90,000, $93,000. So you'll see that I'm increasing that by $63,000, which is the difference between the new grant and the previous of $30,000. And what we've done is you'll see below under the revenue, so the reductions to budgets, I've just put that right into a reserve. And it, as noted on the slide that's included later in the presentation, over the course of the year, we'll come up with planning, kind of leading the charge on that, working with council. Staff report will be brought back to council for what that money is proposed to be spent on in the reserve. There's just shy of 200,000. I think there's about 180,000 in that reserve now. So with this 90,000, I mean, we're getting up to where there's enough money in there that we can do something significant. We've been doing things like purchasing electric vehicles, swapping out incandescent lights with LEDs, that type of thing. But so again, a report will be brought back to council to seek some direction on how to spend that money, and we'll do a budget amendment to recognize that at some point in the future here. The next one, HR, Human Resources Information System annual subscription fee. What's proposed there? The HR department has indicated that the current system that we have, or the HR system that we have as part of our financial software system that includes the general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and everything else. HR has indicated that that system isn't providing them with the information that they need. They're unable to pull the reports to get the data out of the system. So they're shopping for a system that will do that. So this is a quote at this point in time. An RFP has not been put out for this, but that $38,488 is the budgeted annual cost, a licensing fee to get that software. The WorkSafe BC premium adjustment. This is something else that we've seen some increases over the last couple of years. We had BC Municipal Safety Association do an audit of the city's occupational health and safety practices recently, and they advised that Kimberley has one of the highest WCB experience rating surcharges in our industry, which is not a great. It's not something we want, and there are some initiatives being undertaken to kind of get a handle on that. We're going to be seeking the core certification through WorkSafe, which would reduce our premiums. So we are trying to address this, but for 2023, the base rate for the WCB premium is 3.19%, so $3.19 per $100 of accessible payroll. And WCB, when they're establishing premium rates for a particular group, they'll go through and have a look at the number of claims that each organization has made, and they'll either provide you with a rate that's lower than that base rate, or they'll add on a surcharge. In Kimberley's case, they've added on a 43.8 surcharge, or 43.8% surcharge. So instead of 3.19, we're paying 4.59. So in dollars, that calculates to about $111,000 extra that we're paying every year. Our WCB premiums are $288,000, give or take, or they will be for 2023. And if we were at that base rate, which is the average across our industry group, we'd be paying about $176,000. So about $112,000 difference there.
Yep.
So that,
Councillor McBain.
Well, I think I'd just be remiss to not ask. I mean, it sounds like things are, the rates are based on past history. So does that just mean that we've had an extraordinary high number of claims compared to other places, or?
yeah, our claims costs have been quite high. They're better in 2023. In 2022, they were 3 times the industry average, or our class average. So it's we're on the right trend now, but yeah, not great. So the $30,000 that's showing up there, that's the increase to premiums. Hopefully that surcharge will start to drop, and we'll be able to knock that down a bit as years go by here. And then there's some IT licensing fees there as well that primarily relate to migration of our email to the cloud, as opposed to on-site management of it. Microsoft Exchange no longer supports the way that we deliver email. So we're switching to the cloud this year, and that primarily relates to that. So these next slides here they're the ones that I've pretty much gone over here. So again, if there are any questions, please just let me know. But I've kind of summarized these through the table here. So there were some reductions to the budget as well. So development related fees, which relate to building permits, development permits, zoning and subdivision fees, primarily due to a strong residential construction market. The activity has been strong the last few years. The manager of planning has advised that he's comfortable increasing the revenues for those. So the revenues for building permits are being increased by $50,000 from $150,000 to a $200,000 budget. Development permits increasing from 7 to 10,000, zoning from 3 to 7,500, and subdivision fees from 3,000 to 7,500 as well. So it's a $62,000 increase on a $163,000 budget. So we're increasing those revenues by about 38%. So by doing that, that's the equivalent of about a 0.5% tax increase. So because we're able to increase those revenues, we're not having to increase taxes by that 0.53% or 0.5%. So it just again goes to show, we've talked about this before as well, but development it's a really important part of our budgeting process. The stronger the development construction activity is, the less impact there is on our taxpayers. Sandra? I think it really varies community by community, but Troy?
When we've done fee reviews in the past, we've always targeted to kind of be middle of the range compared to other municipalities for what our fees are at. So if anything, we've just fallen behind of any other changes that have happened, because it's been quite a while since we've had an overall review.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to be clear, this is not an increase in fees, right? This is an increase in revenues associated with those fees.
That's correct. We haven't made any changes to the fee rates. This is just an increase in what's anticipated to come in. Yeah.
Is there a, kind of a plan or a work item to, do a current review of fee structure?
Not at this time, but if that's something council would like, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
So the next item here that reduces the budget or provides additional revenue is the interest income. And as everybody knows, anybody that's got some savings or is paying a mortgage, interest has gone up by a bunch over the last 12 months. The Bank of Canada has increased its policy rate from 0.25% in March of 2022 to 4.5% in January 2023. And the city's financial institution, who we have most of our money on deposit with, the rates went from 0.85% in 2021 to 5.1% in January of 2023. So that's allowed us to increase our interest income. So we're increasing the income on general revenue by $50,000. So from 106,000 to 156,000. And that increased interest income is also going to allow us to, we're going to realize an increase to the contributions to reserves as well. So the reserve balances that we're earning 0.25% a year ago, we're going to be earning 5.1 and possibly more here. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's good news on that front for sure. So a couple of slides that provide some tables just to summarize all of this. So the previous table, so the additions from that previous table were $430,000. The total of the reductions or the increases to revenues, 175. So that nets out to an increase to the base budget for the general fund of $255,477. That's talking operational items. There's also a few non-operational items here as well. So the new tax on non-market assessment change, again, that we've discussed previously. So we're anticipating about $184,000 worth of new tax on non-market change. We realized increased assessment of about $35 million in 2023. So that's new assessment in 2023 that wasn't around in 2022, related primarily to new construction. About 32.9 of that 35 million is related to residential construction. So that $84,000, again, it's new tax revenue that we're able to use to offset the increases to the net increases to the base operating budget.
So Jim, if I, just for clarity, so
Mhm.
that $84,000 would be the amount of new taxes on assessment that would be higher than the 20% average that we have. Is that correct? So anybody with an assessment more than the average, which is 20%, would see an incremental increase in taxes. Is that what that number is?
No, this just relates to primarily to new construction. So if
Okay,
a house that didn't exist last year, there was no assessment,
Right.
obviously, then new house that was built, we might have $500,000 of assessment. So that's new tax related specifically to.
Okay. yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for that clarification.
Yep.
Do we have any idea whether it's material over and above that average for homes that went up more than the 20%?
It's difficult to say from year to year. I mean, this year there was some significant increases, as I think everybody's aware. But I mean, it is the average. So I mean, the folks that were at that 19%, which, you know, you can't really say it's not a median, so it's not 50% above, 50% below, but
No.
Yeah.
But there were a fair number that would be above that we are going to get incremental tax revenue from as well.
there will be, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So the next increase to revenues there that's non-operational is an adjustment to the Fortis BC operating fee. And it's a charge. It's based on 3% of the gross revenue for the provision and distribution of all the gas that's provided within Kimberley. So that's something that Fortis charges and then gives back to the municipality by way of an operating fee. So we had $109,000 budgeted for that, and we're able to increase that budget by $53,000 to $162,000 this year. So that's really helping to keep the tax adjustment down as well.
Question? Hydro? What's the situation with hydro?
Hydro, we don't get an operating fee through hydro, but the hydro fees in the budget, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
The inflationary increase over the past 12 months for hydro was about, I think it was 11.9% or something like that. So that didn't get hit with the 6% adjustment. It got hit with the 11.9
Right, okay.
for inflation. So if you take into account the net adjustment to the base operating budget from the operational and the non-operational, we end up with an increase or proposed increase to the general operating base budget of $118,400, which equates to a tax adjustment of just over 1%, so 1.02%. I do have a note at the bottom there that the non-market assessment change, it's based on the completed assessment roll, which is the last step before the revised assessment roll that'll come out in April. So once we have that revised assessment roll and the final tax rate set, that number will change. I don't think, hopefully the number won't be material. Should be fairly close to what we've got here.
So does that take into account challenges that would come in January, from?
No,
No,
no. So yeah, we are anticipating a few, but typically the challenges that are made and that end up winning the challenges, the adjustments very
small.
immaterial. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you take the 1.9% inflationary adjustment that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation here, and you add on the 1.02 from the previous slide, we're looking at a 2.92% proposed tax increase for 2023 on the general operating base budget. I've added a couple of lines to the bottom of the table here for 2023 service level adjustments as approved by council, if any, or other adjustments directed by council prior to the budget finalization. So if between now and the April or May adoption of the 5-year financial plan, there are additional things that come forward, those will be brought back to council and a separate resolution will be presented. Councilor McBain?
Yeah, I think it's nice that you leave that option in there, and it just kind of gives us some time to, or gives us some flexibility to be able to adjust to, you know, to anything that comes up. And so I appreciate that. I just more in general, though, I mean, I read this over the weekend, or I guess it was Thursday. I was just actually blown away. I mean, it's really good news when you think about it, and to me, it's a culmination of you know, Jim, you and your team, and all our operations staff. I mean, really all the entire city staff. I mean, we should be pretty happy, at least right now where we're at. I know we're not at the finish line yet, but this is really, really good. So so well done to everybody.
Yeah, and I appreciate those comments because we first started talking about budgets. I mean, we were thinking we'd be, you know, in the mid-5 range at the lowest. The adjustments to the revenue have really a bit of a saving grace in order to keep that down. But yeah, to be just under 3% at this point is, yeah, we're doing really well, as this next slide will show here.
And Troy, I didn't mean to leave planning out either. So
Go ahead, Sandra.
Well, I just feel, I felt kind of the same way when I was reading this. I thought, wow, we're going to come to this meeting tonight and the other shoe's going to drop. The rest of it will show up, you know, and it just blows me away that you guys have been so fiscally responsible in the manner in which you've presented, as well as the manner in which you've been operating things. And I, for one, am so proud of you. I don't know if that matters or not, but it's just really amazing in view of what's happening around us that we were able to get through COVID, where we had a year where we didn't raise anything and still come out in this place. And you guys are amazing.
Yeah, thanks for
appreciate
those
this.
comments.
Thank
So,
you, Sam.
go ahead, Councilor Roy.
Jim, is this the lowest increase in the province?
I don't know about that, but it's the lowest I've seen out of anybody. I mean, I've got a list on the next page here that provides a bunch. Oh. But yeah, the list, I mean, it ranges here anywhere from Salmon Arm is 3.83 and Terrace is up at 10.33. And I mean, I'm aware of a lot of provinces that, you know, are well above 10% this year. They're just, everybody's having a really hard time dealing with the inflationary factors and everything else. So.
Well done and thank you.
So
Appreciate the comments.
So good fiscal management isn't something that happens overnight, you know, just because you need to do it for a particular year. And I think the other thing about good fiscal management is you don't see it until times get tough. And I think that over this last year or two, when things have been a little tougher, I think all the prudent management over the last number of years that have been put in place are really starting to show. And you guys don't get those awards for nothing. There's a reason why those financial reporting and kind of the shape we're in happens. So congratulations to you know, all staff, in particular the finance staff, for the great work here. Now, we're not done yet. I want to remind council, we still have some considerations to do, but quite frankly, no matter where we end up at this point in time, it's going to exceed expectations. And I think that I think the other key point I want to make is that we're not doing this by cutting. I mean, you can always get down to a 2% or a 3% or a 4% increase if you want to defer investments that need to be made, or if you want to make cuts to services and things like that. I think those are always actions of last resort. And I would really, really hate to see us get in a position where we are getting defensive, because if you do that, you pay the price eventually. We saw that with the 0% increase that we took at the beginning of COVID, all for good reasons. But we ended up having to double up in the following couple of years because it's deferred. You cannot get away without paying.
Yeah.
And I think our entire budget is well served, and hopefully staff feel like they've been well served as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks for the comments, Council. Okay. I think I can speak on behalf of all the staff, but to say we really appreciate that. So the direction requested from Council with regards to that previous section is that Council approve for inclusion in the 5-year financial plan the changes detailed on slides 11 through 12, and that the property tax collections for 2023 be increased by 2.92% to fund the changes.
Mover, Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Karen seconds. Any further discussion, Council? All right. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Council. So on to the next section here, discussion on the Aquatic Center parcel tax. And we've just had a bit of a discussion about this in previous budget meetings as well. So the calculation that you're going to see is a preliminary calculation as noted on the direction slide here. We don't have the final parcel count yet, so we'll wait for that when we get the revised roll, so we can get a more accurate calculation of the parcel tax count. But I'll just go through a bit of history on the Aquatic Center parcel tax and then jump into the calculation. So in 2019, Council changed the funding model for the Aquatic Center such that the entire operating deficit and the associated debt payments are funded through the collection of a parcel tax. The intention of that was really just to increase transparency with regard to how much the Aquatic Center is costing us. It was previously funded through a combination of the parcel tax, property tax, and then a contribution from Bootleg Gap Golf Course under the operating agreement that we have. Of course, the golf course is gone, so I think this is just a lot cleaner way of doing it. Because the parcel tax can only be used for the purpose for which it was created. It was created by a bylaw. And in that bylaw, it says the money can only be used to fund the construction and operation of the Aquatic Center. So if in any given year we've collected more parcel tax than we need to fund the operating deficit, what we're doing is putting that excess or surplus into a parcel tax reserve. And then if there is any surplus, and then we're taking that out in the next year, applying it to the calculation, which results in a reduction to the amount of parcel tax or to the levy for that year. So because in 2022, revenues exceeded budget, expenditures were lower than budget, we were able to contribute to the reserve. And there was some money left in there last year that we were going to transfer out as well. We didn't need to, so we're left with a $68,050 balance in that parcel tax reserve at the end of 2022. So on the next slide here, it shows the preliminary calculation. So we're budgeting revenue 347, revenue of just about 1.2, and then we've got revenue of about 347, expenditures of just about 1.2, and then a debt payment of just about $200,000. So the Aquatic Center deficit is $1,042,562, and the reserve balance that we discussed on the previous slide, if we reduce the amount of deficit by that, we're left with 974,512. The preliminary number of parcels is 4649. So just a simple calculation there comes up with a parcel tax of $205.62. So again, that I don't anticipate that calculation is going to change much once we get the final parcel tax count, but that's just, it gives council an idea of where we're at. I think last year it was $205 and change. So not much of an adjustment. And then just a bit of a note at the bottom there that having that reserve balance, it resulted in the parcel tax levy, we were able to reduce it by $14.64. So assuming that revenues and expenditures are closer to budget next year and we don't have a contribution to that parcel tax reserve or have a small one, the parcel tax is probably going to be $15 higher or so than this. So just a bit of a heads up as we move forward here.
So the parcel tax, particularly during COVID while we were shut down. It's been up and down like a yo-yo.
It really does, yeah.
To say the least. But I think the important thing here is that from a taxpayer point of view, whether it is up or down, it accurately reflects the cost of the facility. And I think that's the key thing. It
Yeah.
is what it is. The aquatic center is a very important amenity to the community. I think everybody would agree with that. And knowing exactly what it costs on a year-over-year basis is important. So,
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So on the direction slide here, again, I'm just indicating that we're not seeking direction on setting the parcel tax at this point. When we have that final parcel count, I'll bring a staff report back with the final calculation and ask for direction to prepare the bylaw at that time. So the next few slides here talk about adjustments to the base operating budgets for water and sewer. So similar to what we went through with the general, there are a lot less adjustments to talk about here. Few adjustments for water that net out to a reduction of $8,887, comprised of inflationary increases and insurance premium increases. So that $8,887 that's there as noted on the slide following here, seeking council direction. So just asking for council's direction to approve those adjustments and that those savings be directed to the water operating capital reserve, which is used to fund infrastructure capital projects in the future.
Council clear on that? Councilor McBain moves and Councilor Royer seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried.
I should have mentioned at the onset of the presentation here that Rob Topping is here somewhere. Rob is the manager of utilities. So as we're going through the water and sewer here, if there are any questions, you can ask him. As we get into the capital stuff here, we've also got Nick Morissette, Senior Manager of Operations, and Nicole is here as well. She's a manager of Parks and Facilities. So there are a few changes that we're proposing on the capital side of things. So if you have any questions as we're going through those, please let us know and I'll step out of the way. And of course, Troy's here as well to answer anything related to planning. So jumping on from the water to the sewer, again, there are just a few adjustments that we're proposing here. Inflationary increases of $22,000, similar to what we discussed on the general side. The insurance is actually being reduced here, and that's a result of a reallocation to water in general as opposed to a decrease to the premiums. We're just changing where it's being coded to. The goods and services increase due to operating permit conditions. We're increasing that by $24,000. I did include a slide on that. The information that Rob provided me with is those charges are due to an amended operating agreement or amended operating permit for the treatment plant for the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. So the permit has a bunch of new conditions that require additional funding to complete, including maintenance and operational, maintenance manuals, contingency plans, submission of an annual report, infiltration inflow strategies, all of which must be completed by a qualified professional that we're obligated to engage and of course pay. So
Go ahead.
I have to get Rob Topping on microphone. So sorry, Topper. Just out of curiosity, the permit, like, getting your O&M or O&M manuals maintained and the contingency plan, that kind of stuff wasn't in the permit before?
We didn't have any of that as a requirement of the permit previously. So that permit dates back to about 1994, and it was just a renewal from the previous permit. So they didn't have any of that information in there. We didn't have to have any requirements for it. So it was all developed in the last few years.
We get to develop a new O&M plan for a plant that will hopefully not be there much longer.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's actually quite a lot of involvement with the ministry at this stage too.
Yeah.
So we're still working on the REMP program, and that'll be ongoing for the next couple of years.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Further? Go ahead.
Okay, and then the last adjustment we're proposing here is $60,000 revenue increase to the sewer user fees that are being collected. And this relates to previous direction provided by council to increase the user fees from the 2% that we had previously to 5%. And that's due to a combination of the inflationary increases that we're experiencing and the cost of constructing municipal infrastructure. So that additional $60,000 is that'll be directed to paying for increased operating costs. Most of it's going into reserves to fund future capital. It's just the information you just provided. So the direction slide on this is similar to water, that council approved the changes and approved the adjustments. The corresponding adjustment be directed to the reserve.
Councillor Roberts moves and Councillor Dunneback seconds. Any further discussion? Right, the motion is carried.
Okay, thanks, council. So the next section of the presentation here deals with adjustments to the 5-year capital and non-capital plan. So this was one of the first things the council did as a new group here on December 7th. You were presented with the 5-year capital and non-capital project plan and directed that those projects be approved and that year 2 of the current 5-year financial plan be amended to reflect those new projects and adjustments to year 2. And what that allowed us to do is to get the tenders out early on a bunch of the big projects. So we've done that. A bunch of them have been awarded already. So we're, in my experience anyways, we're miles ahead of where we've been in previous years because of this exercise. So we try to do that early, knowing that things are going to change. So there's a number of changes here for various reasons. A lot of them are due to carry forward. So either equipment being ordered in 2022 and just due to supply chain issues, we're not due to receive those pieces of equipment until 2023. There have been some grant programs that have come up that we've applied for. So I won't spend a lot of time on each of these, but this is the list of projects that we're proposing the previous 5-year capital, non-capital project plan be adjusted by. So the items with an asterisk beside the description of the project indicate that I've got additional slides in behind that provide some more information on some of the more material items. And then in the numbers in the blue font there indicate budget carry forwards. So I won't really spend any time on those. They were approved in the previous 5-year plan, and some of them the full budget, like the first one there on the plow. We ordered that in early 2022 and delivery was delayed. The rest of these are mostly just the remainder of what wasn't spent in 2022 being spent in 2023 on those carry forward numbers.
So Jim,
Yep.
got a question for Nick. The Alpine Crescent, both the sanitary sewer lining and I guess specifically the paving contract. So is obviously the lining will be done. Is the plan to pave above kind of where the track is, or kind of what's the plan for the Alpine Crescent paving? How extensive is that going to be?
It covers about half of the neighborhood, I would say currently. We did put a good contingency factor in there, so we can expand that a little bit as we see fit. Yeah, I think it was that all of Alpine Crescent as you first go in, and then about half of Aspen Road as you go in and around. So,
Councillor McBain.
Just further to that, the values that we have in here, that includes the contingencies built into, correct?
yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the first big one that you see there that we're adding to the capital plan is the Curling Club Improvement Project. This was just approved by council this past Monday at the February 27th meeting. So there was a grant that came available. So that there was a grant application submitted for this. The curling club is going to kick in some money, and then the city's portion of that $182,000 project is $14,000, $14,285. So if the grant doesn't come through, that project won't proceed unless we find alternate funding. But even though most of it is funded by a grant, we need to recognize that in our 5-year plan and recognize the funding that goes along with it. I've got a slide on this as well, so I won't talk about it too much, but the facilities that's being built on the former gymnastics club site, where there was a budget approved for that of $1,017,950 on December 7th. We've since entered into a contract and agreement with a contractor for that project. And we're also adding a little bit, $97,000 for a 500 square foot addition, with that $97,000 being funded through a combination of CBT and RDEK grants. So we're adding $124,000 to that overall budget just to capture all of that stuff, the contract cost and the 500 square foot addition. The next one there, Kimberly Bike Park revitalization. I've got quite a bit of information in council's package here because it's not really something we've had any discussion on previously. I believe it was November 28th. We had a presentation from the Kimberly Trails Society. There was a subcommittee they put together to deal with this. Following that presentation, there wasn't any direction provided by council, but there was some discussion that happened over the course of the budget meetings that there was some interest in pursuing that. So I do have some information. There's actually a copy of the November 28th presentation is attached as an appendix if you want to have a look at that. There's been quite a bit of discussion since that presentation between Nicole, manager of parks and facilities, and the person that's heading up that subcommittee. And the project has been rejigged a bit. It's been changed from 3 phases to 2. There's some other things that have changed. Nicole's certainly the person to talk to if you have any questions about that. But so this $108,000 that we've got in here just reflects the cash contribution from the various parties involved. There's some in-kind as well on the city's part and on Kimberly Trail Society's part. But what it shakes out to, most of that cost is being funded by CBT through a grant that they're providing. There will be a staff report on the next regular meeting agenda if council approves this, to enter into a contribution agreement with them for that $64,000. City of Kimberly's contribution would be $22,700 on the cash front. And then there, like I say, there is some in-kind as well. Yeah, if you do have any more questions on that, I can flip to the slides here and we can speak to them, or you can certainly ask Nicole, who's the expert on this one.
Just a clarification, you said 22,700.
Yes.
Kind of on one of the slides here, it indicates it's 33,333, like a third of 100 over 3 years.
That was the initial, when they presented on November 28th, they indicated that in order for CBT to approve their funding, they needed a commitment from the city for $100,000 over 3 years. 333 in each of the years. Since Nicole and this committee have been working together, that's been changed up quite a bit. It's Nicole's proposing that just phase 1 proceed at this point in time. City's contribution on that is 22,700. Then there is a phase 2. The big part of the project on that is the paved pump track, and it's being proposed that be put on hold for now, that phase 2. So it's not proposed that be included in the 5-year plan, pending completion of the recreation facilities master plan. And there's the Kimberly Trail Society is on board with that as well, I believe.
Okay, awesome. Kevin, go ahead.
I just want to say, I remember the presentation there, and I've thought about it ever kind of since it was brought to the table, and to see this be brought up and to see everybody sort of coming together and finding this money to invest in our youth. Well, actually all ages. I've seen full on grown men, women down there doing things that we shouldn't be. But this makes me super happy. That's all.
Councilor McBain.
Yeah, I just had a question. Could you just, Nicole, can you just give us a little bit of a taste of like the green space phase? Just a real high level overview of what that kind of looks like.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Essentially, the green phase is prettying up the lawn itself, making it a functional, usable space so users know what to do when they come to the park. What am I supposed to do? What track am I supposed to go on to based on my skill level, advanced, sort of almost like the ski trails or the bike trails that you see, the green, the blue, the black, so on from there. Signage came up a lot when we chatted with MIA in terms of how do I use and how do I engage with the park. So that was one of the goals of the project.
Councillor Roberts?
Thank you. Nicole, could you just tell me in a quick sentence, what is a pump track?
A paved bicycle track. Exactly.
Thank you.
So a bowl type shape, S curves.
Okay, okay.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, pump track is where you don't have to pedal. If the track is set up properly, you can go all the way across just with like a pumping motion rather than pedaling. So it becomes super smooth and fluid. It's actually kind of neat to watch guys that are really good at it.
Anything further, council? Yeah. Go ahead.
Nicole, why are we only committing for 1 year?
Thank you, Councillor. At this point, without engaging the community in terms of feeling what the interest is in biking, I don't think we have a defined service level for when it comes to biking and how we offer that to the community. So I think with the development of a Parks and Facilities Master Plan, we'll have an opportunity to find out from the community what their needs and wants are when it comes to biking. With this project, it allowed us to deal with some risk factors that have been identified and clean up the area to make it safe while potentially allowing for development to happen in the future.
Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of benefits to this project. I mean, not only would we be offering an improved facility to the public, but there are some features in that park that have been identified in our municipal insurance associations. They come and do an annual review of some of our facilities, and since 2010, there's been a couple of features identified in there as liability risks. So this would mitigate those, which is a big benefit to the city as well in the long run.
So last question, Nicole. Last spring, there were a lot of trees identified that were likely going to have to come out at some point, but all of the ribbons and markings and everything have kind of disappeared. What is the status of that?
Actually, I'm happy to report we just announced we received our quotes for those, and we will be engaging a company to remove 13 trees that were identified within the danger report.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
And that'll be part of the city's in-kind contribution. That'll be absorbed within our operating budgets there.
All right.
So the Center 64 furnace and boiler replacement is the next line item on here, and that's, I think most of council is aware that we had an issue in December with it resulted from repairs to the roof of that facility. We had some venting issues that resulted in those heating appliances being shut down. They haven't been turned back on since. But the budget that we've got in here is based on a recommendation from a HVAC specialist to replace both that boiler and furnace with higher efficiency appliances. We're still waiting on quotes to come in to get a final number on that, but that's the budget we're working with for now, and we think that's going to be sufficient based on the information that we have so far. Let's see, where are we here? Probably the next one here is probably the last one I'll speak to in case there's questions on any of the rest. Former gymnastics facility, so facility owner's advisor. So the contract that we've entered into with the contractor for the construction of that facility speaks to the need for a couple of roles, the owner's advisor and the payment certifier. So Stevenson's Engineering, who's the city's consulting engineer for work related to municipal facilities, has provided a quote of $44,600 to undertake that work, just to make sure that, as we're going through that project, that everything's being done according to plan. They look after all the payment certification. So that 44.6 is not part of the $1 million and change that is on the previous slide. So this is an additional budget over and above. And it really is just good business practice to have those.
Go ahead, Stephen.
The gymnastics, is there a estimated starting date and also an ending date too?
Scott may be able to speak to that.
Yeah, it's starting. They're in the design phase right now, so they're working on it. I would assume as soon as the snow melts, they'll get working on clearing the land and getting ready, and it will be complete in December.
For that, Scott.
Okay, and the only other big numbers here at the bottom there, we spoke a bit about Alpine Crescent already. Fire Station 2 renovation, there's a budget in 2025 right now for renovation of that station. Council received a presentation on January 9th. It spoke a bit about the renovations to that hall, provided a budget estimate that's a lot higher than the 295 that's in here. The 295 was based on the anticipated balance of the fire training reserve at that point in time. So what we've done, as council is aware, we're getting building condition assessments done on all of our major municipal facilities. We do have some of the work the remedial work that's mentioned in those BCA's budget condition assessments, building condition assessments in 2023. But the big stuff we haven't included through the balance of the 5-year plan, pending the completion of some of the other reports, so that we can have a look at all of our facilities as a whole and make decisions on which are priorities and where the money should go. So until we've got kind of all that information together, we've just kind of pulled this one back, and it'll be thrown into the mix, and we're looking at all of that stuff and trying to prioritize where we want the money to go for facilities.
So do we have an ETA on that yet? Was that coming along, Nicole?
All the assessments have been completed. They're in draft format right now. I received Center 64s yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, the report.
I received a draft yesterday. So for one of them, there's 3 more to come for this year.
I guess we're talking about different things here. The master plan, facilities master plan.
I believe it'll be released for tender tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's it for the changes to the capital projects, unless there's any questions. Any other questions? So the next slide here is proposed changes to the non-capital projects. They were approved on December 7th. So again, anything with an asterisk, there's additional information in the slide. The blue font, blue text relates to carry forward projects. So I'm going to speak to the first one, the development process review. This relates to Troy's department. So if you do have any questions, I'm sure he can answer them for you. So there was a grant approved for this. I believe we received notification in 2021 on this. And so the project itself is related to a review of the development process. There's on the slide that relates to this, it talks about how the grant was for $200,000. City's contribution would be $15,000 to make up the total. There's various components of the project, including the contracted services, which would include development approval procedures, review and updating the application guides, forms, communications, subdivision development servicing, bylaw review and communications, which I believe some of that has taken place, but I don't know, Trey, did you want to speak to this at all, or?
Yeah. We've been doing some of the work in this. We have been underway on some of the aspects of this project, although we are certainly behind on our original timeline. We probably will be reducing the overall scope here. I think just that realizing that some of that process review we can do in-house with some of the additional resources that we added in the past year and a bit. One other, so the original grant application there was for a large amount. I think going into that, we weren't quite certain of the overall scope, but like I said, I think we can reduce that scope a little bit. And you know, about half of that value was to look at potential software and other you know, digital solutions that might support that process a little bit and potentially improve you know, from a customer service perspective there, just the accessibility of some of that some of the application process and providing input there. So
Go ahead, Jason.
Troy, when you're going through a review process like this that essentially looks at, you know, how things are done, is there a portion of it that evaluates our current capacity within your group compared to, you know, how the process is going now and you know, into recommendations that would come out of this? Is there a component there too that would help maybe guide you with resourcing moving down the road?
yeah, that's perhaps part of it for sure. I think part of it is just a lot of it comes down to kind of the bylaw review aspect of it as well. Just we have got procedural bylaws and just how we're like, for example, our subdivision development servicing bylaw. We've been doing some work in that regard to review and update that bylaw. So some of that is just, you know, the development requirements, right? Making sure that that's clear and you know, kind of meeting modern expectations, I guess, right? So some comparison about to other local governments as well, to see where they're at with certain things. You know, this is a big area of focus at the provincial level right now too, to you know, help local governments kind of streamline those processes and make way for you know, more efficient processes to create more housing more quickly. Just as an example, but you know, for us, we're looking at not just residential aspect, but commercial, industrial as well.
Further? Right, go ahead,
Okay.
Jim.
So unless there's, most of the other stuff on the slide here, there's nothing really big there. The next one is really just an adjustment to the timing on the chlorine generation cell replacement. Manager of Utilities has indicated that needs to be advanced from 2024, where it sits in the budget now, to 2023. And the budget actually decreased on that by $15,800 from $87,000 to $71,240. And then the rest of the stuff here is fairly small, but if there are any questions on it, certainly try to answer them.
Council? Okay, it's pretty clear.
Okay. So we'll just flip to the last direction slide here. Which is that council approved the changes.
Councillor McBain moves. Councillor McGuire seconds. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay, thank you, council. So that's it for the presentation tonight. Proposed next steps here are, we've still got a bit of time here. There's a few meetings between now and when I'm proposing
Okay.
to bring.
There's two other motions on here.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, the other resolutions are the first one, that staff be directed to prepare the 5-year financial plan bylaw and bring it back to the April 11th meeting for 3 readings.
Councillor Roberts moves. Councillor Dunneback seconds. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
And the second one is with regards to the 2023 tax rates bylaw that council draft that, bring it back to the April 11th meeting as well.
Mover. Counselor Royer moves. Counselor Roberts seconds. Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you, Council. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, for reminding me about that. So the April 11th meeting, as per the resolutions, we're proposing that those bylaws be brought back for first three readings. And between now and then, we'll also bring back information on the Aquatic Center parcel tax bylaw and calculation as well. If that goes ahead as planned, on April 24th, we'll bring those bylaws back for consideration of adoption. And then second week of May, second and third weeks of May, we'll have the tax notices out to the public.
Council, any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you for your presentation tonight, Jim. Again, you know, it's user-friendly and it just makes our job so much easier to understand. And the staff too. Just want to thank everyone in this room for a great job. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We received a few emails from some members of the public as well, and it's good to hear that. It's good to get that feedback because that's the goal, is to kind of keep this stuff understandable and. Oh, it's good to hear, though.
Okay, anything further? Do you want to? Yeah, no. Okay, we do have an in-camera, couple of items in camera. So I will need a motion to move in camera. Councillor Royer moves and Councillor Dunneback seconds. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, folks.